What is going on, everybody? Bringing another challenge video to you all, and this one is centered around smothered mates, or a checkmate where you smother the king with a knight because they cannot escape because they are surrounded by their own army. I don't know how many examples I'm going to be able to come up with, but we can only find out. It is always white's move. Let's go. We are going to start off with very simple problems, and then we will move on slowly to more complex positions. White's turn to move, and we will give you 3 seconds to pause if you need. 1, 2, and 3. The proper move here is knight to f7, checkmate. White to move, we'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, and 3. The proper move here is knight to g6, checkmate. The knight cannot be captured because the pawn on h7 is pinned. We'll give a real game example of the previous position. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need to. 1, 2, and 3. This is from the Karpov variation, where black made the mistake of moving their knight to f6. That allows us to put our knight on d6 for checkmate. Karpov, Khan. White to move, and we'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, and 3. The proper sequence is queen h7 check. The king cannot capture the queen because it is guarded by the knight on g5. The only piece that can capture the queen is the knight on f8. Once the queen is captured, that allows us to move in with our knight to f7, checkmate. I'm going to break protocol for a second. This comes out of the Italian game. And if black moves the knight again to d4 and white captures the e5 pawn, the queen can come to g5. And if the knight tries forking the rook and queen, you can take the g pawn. Rook slides over to protect itself, and you capture the e4 pawn. Now from here, if white moves the queen, they lose the queen. If they block with the bishop, we'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video and see if you can find the SMOTHERMATE. 1, 2, and 3. The proper answer is knight to f3, checkmate. This is the Blackburn shilling gambit, and it's a real thing. So these examples are real. On to the next. It is white to move. We will give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The sequence for this checkmate is queen f7 check. The king must move to the corner. And then queen g8 check. The king can't recapture since the bishop is covering it, so the rook must come in and capture the queen. Once that happens, we are free to move our knight to f7 for checkmate. We'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The proper move here is queen capture f7 check, sending the king to the corner. Now that we have a battery, we go ahead and put the queen on g8 check. Doesn't matter if black captures the queen with the knight or the rook. We come in for the smother on f7 with our knight. Checkmate. We'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video if you need. 1, 2, 3. Sequence here is knight f7 check, and the king must move to g8. The best move is knight to h6, double check. The king is not going to move to f8 because then that would be queen f7 checkmate. So the queen's going to tuck back in the corner to h8. Once that happens, we can move our queen to g8 now, checking the king again. The king can't capture the queen because it is guarded by the knight. So the rook on b8 must come in and capture the queen. Once it has done so, we are free to move the knight back to f7 for checkmate. Similar to the last problem, give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The last problem, the king was in the corner, and here we need to push the king to the corner. There are 3 squares which do check the black king. 2 of them are guarded by the rook. The c4 square is still available, and that would push the king to the corner. If the king goes to f8, we would have easy checkmate, but we know that's not the route. Some of you might be thinking that, can't the rook just block? No, it's not going to, because then we would have check. If they went left, we would scoop up the checkmate instantly, and if we went right, we would get the corner. And that's a lot faster that way, rather than putting up the most resistance going to the corner. Once the king's in the corner, then we have knight f7 check, bringing the king to g8, double check, knight h6. Easiest way would be if the king went to f8, that would be queen f7 check, mate, but we know they're not going to make it easy. So the king's going to go back to the corner. That's when we can bring our queen to g8. Must capture with the rook, since the king can't capture the queen. It's guarded by the knight. Once the rook captures the queen on g8, knight f7 checkmate. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video. 1, 2, and 3. The proper move, and the only move, is knight to f8 check. None of black's pieces can capture the knight except for the queen. Once the queen captures the knight on f8, you capture the queen and under promote to a knight for checkmate. We'll give you 3 seconds to pause the video for this one. 1, 2, and 3. The solution to this position or puzzle or problem, whatever you want to call it, the order does not matter, but the same 3 moves must be executed simultaneously or consecutively. Knight, capture knight with check. The rook will come in. Knight, capture rook with check. The queen will come in. And then pawn, capture queen with an under promotion. Checkmate. Like I said, the move order doesn't matter. You can come in and promote to the knight with a capture first. And it doesn't matter which knight you capture with next, as long as all 3 happen. Give you 3 seconds to pause the video, and we're probably going to end on this note. I'll give you a hint. This is checkmate in 8. 1, 2, and 3. To start off, the proper sequence, and the only sequence, is rook to d8 check. Because typically when you have a smothered mate, the king is blocked in with a rook. And that's why the rook is not able to capture the knight on the square next to it diagonally. If it was a queen, it would be able to, so we have to get that out of the way first. The only move black has is to capture. And from here, we still have to get rid of the queen. So now we come in with our second rook, capturing the queen. Their only move is to capture with the rook. And now we have to check the king on the diagonal, just like the other motifs. The only square that does that is b3. And they can throw in a stalling move by moving the knight to c4. And we can simply capture that before we move on. The king is not going to move to f8 because that would be simply checkmate. So the king's going to move to the corner. And that's when we can bring our knight to f7, forcing the king to g8. And then we simply double check. Yet again, not going to go f7 because king's not going to go f8 because queen f7. So it'll go to the corner. Once it's in the corner, we can bring our queen, forcing to take with the rook, and we finish up with knight f7 checkmate.